Super. So we are live. Hi, Stacy.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Um, welcome to one of the Facebook Lives from BPW Greater Moncton. I'm Frances. I'm part of the BPW Greater Moncton crew, and we're super excited to welcome a special guest, Stacey Van Wart, who's a registered clinical social worker. So before we start the presentation, let me quickly introduce Stacey. Stacey's a registered clinical social worker, trained in solution-focused brief therapy with over 12 years of experience. She's a firm believer in engaging in exercise movement while having meaningful conversations. So really the best way for someone to become the best version of themselves. In her spare time, Stacey is super active. She bikes, she swims, she runs, and she's an avid CrossFitter. And she's competed in several triathlon. And we're going to hear today about how she swam the Northumberland Strait and what learnings she has had from that experience. So, welcome, and over to you to talk about your incredible feat.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and thank you for inviting me and taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear me share my story about me swimming across the Northumberland Strait. And so, yes, so I'll just go right into it. And it's really quite parallel with what I've experienced as I swam across the Northumberland Strait. It's very similar to what we're experiencing with the pandemic. And it's like, what's happening? Why is this so hard with this pandemic? And as we continue to go through it, we're a lot of us are struggling. It's not easy. We're probably experiencing a lot of fatigue from trying to figure it out, trying to plan, fatigue from doing the Zooms and figuring out what phase we're in and what does that mean for this phase. We might be starting to feel a little trapped, finding it hard to kind of motivate ourselves, kind of anxious about what am I going to do? Like, where is my future going to be? Can also create some sadness because you know what? I really liked the way my life was pre-COVID. And now I can see that slipping away and I have no idea what is going to be happening in front of me. Some hopelessness too, because like I can't control anything. I can't solve this problem. So there's a lot of different emotions. It's also that opportunity, some people are saying too, that it's been a reset for me and it's kind of allowed me to kind of figure out what is it really important to me. And as we've been going through that, lots of people have been putting out different ways to help manage this time. And I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and she came up with a 4-step process to help navigate through things that we've never experienced before. So it's her process of when you're faced with something new, this is her steps that she suggests that we take. And I'll just quickly go through it. So the first step that she suggests when you are facing something new is to acknowledge that it's happening. You are in something new. You've never done this before. And by naming it and it gives you power to change it. So that's the first step. The second step is to put it into perspective, to realize it's supposed to feel hard. It won't last forever. This will pass. And the way I'm feeling, all of those feelings that we are experiencing, we are supposed to be feeling this way because we've never done this before. The third step is check your expectations, put it into reality. The fact is that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be smooth. And it's not even going to close to being perfect. When you haven't done something before, we have to try 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times before it might even begin to feel, oh, this is feeling a little bit comfortable. And then the last step she talks about is taking rest and recovery. She really stresses the importance of the amount of energy we expend when we're doing something for this first time is huge. It's a lot of mental exertion, physical exertion. So it's important that we take the time to rest and we take the time to recover. And so those were the things that she really suggested that we try doing as we navigate through this pandemic. And I think what I take away is that we have all survived difficult and first times. We've survived difficult decisions, difficult situations, which means we're going to survive this too. It's just figuring out different ways how we can create a calm when there's a whole lot of chaos happening around us. And so that's what makes me think with the swim, how much I have learned from my swim that has helped me navigate through this pandemic. So I thought I would share a little bit of I share my story about how I managed to get myself across the Northumberland Strait. And so these pictures are just sort of share my story. So I'll kind of go in 2013, and then we did it again in 2017. We decided we were going to swim across the Northumberland Strait to get the awareness out there about diabetes and long distance events. Being diabetic, many people will say, you shouldn't really be doing water events, especially long distance ones. And I thought, don't quite agree with that. So this was a feat that we decided we were going to do. So my girlfriend in the top left-hand corner, Lynn, and I decided that we were going to do this together. And as we know, the Northumberland Strait is the bridge itself is 13 kilometers long. The swim ends up being anywhere from 15 to 26 kilometers long, depending on how the tide and how the current goes. So when you do it, your goal is to try to keep it to 15 to 18, but there's a chance it's going to go up to 26 as well. So we knew this particular day in August, I think it was August the 11th that we were doing it. We knew that we needed to start our swim at 7 a.m. because that gave us enough time. It gave us close to 3 hours to get to the middle of the bridge so that we can use the tides to our advantage. So we knew it was going to push us out for the 3 hours, and then it was going to push us back into the bridge for the last 3 hours of the swim. So when we do it that way, we don't work against the current, it works with us, which is way easier than trying to swim against the tide. So we gathered together, my team was my sister, Carrie, on the kayak, and Lynn's team was her husband, Kevin, in his sea kayak. We all gathered together, we met with our boat captain, and the boat captain gave us an idea of where we were going to start. Lynn and I hopped into the boat. Carrie and Kevin took the van and was driving to the land part of where we were going to enter the swim. And we were told that it was going to be an easy entry, not a problem. So we're like, great, we're going to get to the entry point at 6:45, gives us 15 minutes to just get in and then go. So the top middle picture is approximately where we met. So Lynn and I went on the water. And when Carrie and Kevin got to their landing, we all realized there was no way they were going to get the sea kayaks and gear down that little mini cliff to where we needed to be. And we had 15 minutes to do. So we were kind of faced with our first crisis of Lynn and I either waiting for Kevin and Carrie to get all the gear down the hill and then into the water, or we decide to start our swim on our own so that we could almost guarantee we would be in the middle of the bridge when we needed to be. If we were going to delay it, there was a big fear that we were going to miss that and then we would be swimming against the tide. And we just like, that's a really tough decision because safety, it's better when you are with your sea kayakers. Or do we have to fight to finish the swim? So Lynn and I collectively decided that no, we're going to start our swim on our own. Carrie and Kevin were going to then figure out how they were going to get the sea kayaks down and agree that they're going to meet up with us when they can. So Lynn and I hop in the water with the understanding that we were going to swim together until Carrie and Kevin could meet up with us. So we got in and it was like swimming in a washing machine, which I'd never experienced before because you're really close to where the posts are or the icebreakers are. And so it was like swimming literally in a washing machine, kind of banging you up against the post. So we kind of moved ourselves out and we just said, okay, we got to stay away from the bridge as much as we can. But yet you still need to use it as a guide. So we were swimming along and it was probably a good hour before Carrie and Kevin made it to us. And it was such a good moment when we saw them, because we were thirsty and we were hungry. And we didn't have to stress anymore because our safety team was there. The persons that were going to guide us, navigate us through the swim, all Lynn and I had to do was focus on the swim. So we were so excited to see them that we took on some nutrition, and Lynn and I just had our own swim. The way that the tide pushed us out, I went way out, Lynn stayed closer to the bridge. And so it just ended up being me and Carrie together. And so we were swimming along, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't feel so great. And so I was like, okay, not a big deal. I'll just keep swimming. And it got to the point where I had to stop, tread water, and vomit. I was just like, whoa, what is this? Like, I have never, ever experienced any kind of nausea when I've swam, and I've swam in different environments. And I was just like, wow, this is really weird. So Carrie and I just kind of chalked it up as being just a one-off. And I felt fantastic. I was like, okay, I'm good. I put my head back in and I started to swim again. And then the nausea just started to build and build and build. And I was like, crap. Again, you swim for as much as you can, you stop, you vomit. And I was like, this is not good, Carrie. Like, I'm totally screwed. What are we going to do? And she's like, well, we'll just kind of see. Maybe it was the type of gel. So we kind of did some experiments with food and the type of nutrition, because we had a plan: eat every 30 minutes, drink every 15 minutes. So we played a little around with that. That did nothing. I just kept vomiting and vomiting. Then we're like, okay, maybe it's the gels. Let's try something else. Let's try some pretzels or some chocolate. Tried that, vomited that up. And then we're like, okay, maybe don't eat anything. Just maybe drink some ginger ale. So I was drinking ginger ale, was throwing that up. And it got to the point I was in the middle of the lake, or actually we weren't even in the middle at that point. You couldn't see the land behind us. You couldn't see the land in front of us. And the bridge was really, really small. And I remember holding on to Carrie's kayak, and I am sobbing. I'm tired. I feel horrible. Like, I am just done. And my sister just looked at me and she's like, so you have a choice, Stacy. We can totally get the boat. We'll get them to put you in. We'll take you back to shore. And I said, I am not quitting. There's no way. Like, I trained for this. There's no way I'm going to quit. So she's like, well, then vomit and put your head back in and swim. That's what you need to do. And I was just like, okay. And that's what I did. And then I started to kind of experiment with where I positioned myself in relation to where she was, whether I was behind her to see if that helped, if I was in front of her, if I was beside her, if my goggles were on, goggles were off, if I was opening my eyes, not opening my eyes, looking up, looking to the side, just trying anything to alleviate it. Nothing was doing it. And I just had to come to the realization that this was just going to be a crappy swim, and I was going to feel like crap the whole way. Yet, as we were swimming along, there was this moment of peace. It was the most amazing experience. It was like all of a sudden the water was calm, the nausea was gone. And I was just like, wow, what is this? And Carrie's like, this is slack time. The tide has changed. I was like, oh, well, maybe I've been saved. Nope. Then this tide just picked up and the vomiting continued. The nausea continued. The swells were high. So not only was I dealing with the nausea, then I had to deal with the washing machine again because the tide was changing, and then the swells were really high. So I was up and Carrie was down, and there was points like you're just fighting with that. So it was determining how fast I could go. And what I came to really accept, that all I could do was focus on kicking my feet and moving my arms, because that's what I knew I could do, is those things. And it was a real mental battle to just try to like not beat myself up during it, because it wasn't the type of swim I wanted to have. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to have a good time. And I just had to throw that all in the water, literally, and just say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. And so that's what I did. And once I kind of let that go, I started to see a little bit of progress. You started to see that the bridge was getting just a little bit bigger. The pillars, the distance between the pillars were getting a little bit bigger because you were getting closer to it. And then you started to see the land that you were heading to. And you could just see that you're getting closer and closer. And I started to notice those little signs of progress. And then the best was, I'm just so close to the end of the swim as I'm tired from vomiting. I could see the bottom. I'm like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm done. I put my foot down, couldn't even touch the bottom. And my sister's like, nope, you're not done. You got to keep going. I was like, are you kidding me? She's like, no, you got to keep going. And then, so you just focus on when you're so tired and you don't want to do it again. You don't want to do it anymore. I just had to focus on what I knew, what I could do. My skills were kicking my feet and moving my arms. And lo and behold, Carrie said, you can touch the ground now. And I touched it. And it was the most amazing experience. And the best part is that all that crappy feeling instantly went away. It was only exhaustion from the swim, but the nausea was gone, which was just such an incredible experience. So, and then the very last picture is the support team that was there and the people that I did it with. And those were the ones that kind of, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to train and accomplish this amazing swim. So what did I learn from this experience, which I think is so relevant to what we're experiencing today? First and foremost, and is acknowledge and accept how you're feeling. I think as soon as I realized, like with the nausea and just the difficulty with the waves and the currents and what this swim was, that the way I was feeling was super normal. I'd never done this before. Like crying and feeling defeated and not sure if I'd be able to finish it. I think those were all such normal feelings. And as soon as I just accepted that this was the way it was going to be, it just made it just slightly easier. You could just start to see those little things of progress. And I had to also get to a point where there was nothing I could do to get rid of the nausea, nothing. No matter how I positioned myself, no matter how many times I vomited, that nausea wasn't going to go away. So I had to just accept this crappy feeling was going to be a part of me, but it wasn't going to be the thing that was going to stop me from doing it. I just had to accept it and figure out how to live with this, to deal with this uncomfortable feeling. And I don't think it's any different than what we're experiencing in the pandemic. I think the first and foremost is acknowledge that what we're feeling is normal. The exhaustion, the lack of motivation, the fatigue, the sadness, the grief, yet the excitement, because there's maybe some different things that are happening that maybe we never had the opportunity to do before. Maybe that reset button is what we needed to do. And if you're the type of person that enjoys and kind of thrives on solving problems, it might be just a little bit harder because this is a problem we can't solve. We can't get rid of COVID easily. And it's just not possible at this time. And I think when you accept a new normal, it's normal to feel off balance. Accept that new normal is going to feel off balance. Another thing I learned was leaning on your supports. My sister was she was always a big rock in my life, but in that swim, if she hadn't said to me, Stacy, either get in the boat or vomit and go on, I don't know if I would have finished it. When somebody, like, she was just like, you got to make a choice. So put your head back in. If you're not going to quit, then put your head back in and go. And she was so okay with me crying and getting frustrated. And then just like the self-talk, like some of the self-defeating things I was saying, she's like, it's okay, Stacy, you're okay. And it's so, so important during this pandemic to lean on your supports. But not just lean on your supports, but then also be a support for somebody else. Because when you can support somebody else through this, it also fills you up just a little bit more. This third thing was experiments. Like, as I said, when I was going through that swim, we had to do so many different experiments with how much I ate, when I ate, the types of things I was eating, the types of liquids I was eating, trying to eat ginger gravel, trying to eat the regular gravel to try to, you just have to experiment and figure out what makes it just slightly easier. And I think that's so important, especially in this pandemic, because our traditional coping mechanisms may not be available to us and may not be working the way that they would typically work. You may have to do it more, you may have to do it longer in order to get some type of relief. And I think also it's an opportunity to experiment with these experiments, is just let your creativity go. And as I've listened to different, like when I've listened to CBC and the different things people have done to get themselves through this pandemic, whether somebody was saying that they had a chocolate bar not a trade-off, but they were doing like a little bit of competition as to which chocolate bar was the best chocolate bar, and they were kind of rating it. And you know, people were doing tons of puzzles, and people were learning how to bake bread, and people were doing such creative things to be able to get themselves through, to give them that little bit of comfort, a little bit of ease during this pandemic. So it's also the opportunity to be super creative with those experiments. The other thing is taking care of yourself and taking your breaks, just like as Brene Brown was saying with her 4th step. Carrie was really adamant, like, Stacy, take your break, take a moment, chill, let me drag you a little bit, let's just stay here, rest, you are okay. And I think that is just so important, that if we don't take the time to take care of ourselves during this pandemic, it's not going to end well. So we not only want to just survive, but we want to thrive during this. And I think it's so important that we be kind to ourselves, be kind to our neighbors, and take care and encourage everybody to take that break and take care of ourselves. We need to expect less from ourselves so that we can replenish more. And look for those little signs of success, or those little signs of progress. Sometimes we look for these big changes, but a lot of the times when we look at what makes us successful, it is hundreds of little steps that we have taken in order to get where we want to go. So just look for those little tiny successes, and kind of notice that, what difference does it make for us to do those breaks. And the last thing I learned is about building that resiliency bank. And I think just going through the swim just helped me figure out that you can get through a lot of different things. And with this pandemic, if you can just do little things that will build up that resiliency, whether it's just maybe going to bed just a little bit early, making sure you eat when you need to eat, or maybe even look at doing those healthier foods, or maybe getting outside, going for that walk, connecting with nature, reading a book, just doing those, be compassionate, and maybe have those opportunities to show some gratitude to what we do have, even if it's those little things. And I think one of the most important things is focus on what you can do. Like in that swim, I could have focused on how horrible I felt. And I did focus on that for sure. And I could focus on the fact is that the waves were really high and I wasn't moving very fast and it wasn't going as quickly. And I knew I was going to be slow. And I could have focused on all of those things that I wasn't doing, but focusing on what I could do, which I knew how to swim. I knew how to kick my feet, and I knew how to move my arms. And those are the 2 things that I knew. If I just focused on that, eventually I would get to the end. And I think that's so important now. Focus on what you can do. Focus on what has been working, and focus on what those skills are in order for you to get through this. Focusing on what we can't do, yes, we can acknowledge it for sure, but just take some time to focus on what you can do. And so, yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to focus on keeping your arms moving and your feet kicking. So thank you.
That's awesome, Stacy. I'm gonna unshare the screen so
Oh,
we can
yes.
have the chat. No, I don't want to share. This was wonderful. I kept sort of bobbing my head like, yes, yes, that's true. And interestingly, I heard your talk, so I had invited you to speak to my membership early pandemic, and it felt
Yep.
really relevant then. But I will say it feels even more relevant now, um, because it's really sort of, I think early COVID, we were like, oh, couple months, we'll be fine. This is great. But it's that grind now that we're sort of still in it. We're still in the bobbing wave.
Right. Right.
And we're not really sure. There's hope, obviously, but we're not really sure when the bobbing will stop. Right. So there's so much parallel in what you were saying that I think we can learn from. So this is a
So
really
true.
great metaphor.
And as you said, when you're bobbing, right? I remember in that swim, literally, you can't see what's happening in front of you. You can't go back to where you were. You are lit like, and you're literally bobbing in the water. Like that is just, and you just have to figure out how am I going to just keep going to where I hopefully will get to the end and and just get there and figure out how am I going to do that. So true. There was moments of bobbing in that water for sure.
Yeah, and it seems like such a great metaphor, but in your case, it's not a metaphor because it's real life. But to really what we're experimenting now, it does feel like sort of you're almost swimming or existing in a washing machine, getting
Yeah.
banged up, uncertain when it will start. But what I really got from you is control the controllables.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever is within your wheelhouse, create some calm uh, in chaos. And what we're feeling now is normal, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm brought back when you were talking, I'm brought back to a conversation I had with a friend of mine who is, talking about her situation as a mother and a working professional and saying, well, there's other people who have it worse. For
Mm-hmm.
sure. But what you're experiencing is your experience and it's normal. And it's okay to be overwhelmed and it's okay to have these emotions, right?
Right. So many of us do that comparison and that we sort of negate what we're feeling because we think somebody else is going to be worse. And you're right. There are other individuals that are struggling more. That does not say that what we're feeling isn't true and real and absolutely normal in this situation. Absolutely. It doesn't help to, oh, yeah, I guess it could be worse. No, it sucks. It really, really does.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to talk about resiliency. You talked a lot about, you shared a lot of learnings, and I think we can certainly gather some from it. But usually when we think of resilience, it's almost a short term
Mm,
adjusting to a change or an event. But we are in an event that has been much longer than we anticipated. So resiliency, I think, to some extent, also fatigues. And I've also
yep.
heard a lot of people say, my coping mechanisms are either closed, um,
Yep.
or I can't access them, or because of life situations, they no longer work for me.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm curious what you've learned in the past year, what kind of tools you've maybe used or even recommended to your clients to sort of get past this new normal or to adjust to this new normal.
Uh, I think what I have learned is that I guess when I was talking about that creativity, that there's two things. I think having hope that we will get through that. It is amazing how that state of hope and hopefulness is that if that is present within us, and sometimes it can get bogged down with the changes with the phases and the news that we're hearing about cases going up. Sometimes that hope can be sort of diminished. But as we can kind of tap into that hope, or I'm noticing for myself, I have to tap into my hope that this will change, that we will get through that. And when you start to feel a little bit more hopeful, it is incredible how the creative ways of navigating through this pandemic and or in this situation, whether it's a pandemic or not, when you have hope, the creativity, it lends to being creative. And when you're allowed to be creative, the solutions will come. And because everybody is so different, and what works for me generally will not work for another person in maybe in a small, in a little bit of a way, but to truly have something that's going to work, it's like it has to be super personalized. And so when I've talked to clients about navigating their way through it, it's really igniting that hope in them. And once you can ignite that hope, is like, how do you know you're going to get through this? Well, because I've done it before. And then it's like, okay, so if you've done difficult things before, how did you do it? Like, what did you do to get yourself through it? And what skills did you use to get through it? So maybe you used your problem solving skills, or maybe it used my very practical skills of carpentry skills, right? Like I created something, I was able to pass my time with this, or I was able to help out a friend and do this. Like there's just different ways when you can feel hopeful that it's going to change, how the creativeness will come about within the solutions, because you just don't want one solution. You don't want one strategy, because then there's a possibility that strategy is going to fail. But if there's a multiple of ways of navigating through a situation, then you have lots of options to choose. So it's just having that conversation that if I was hopeful, if I knew I was going to get through this, what difference would that make to me? And what would I catch myself doing different because I'm hopeful? Does that answer your question?
Yes, and more.
Okay.
So Carrie is also on the call, so I'm sort of reading her chat as well. And one of the things she says is how you encourage people to be brave, and to allow that space to be. But what really I found interesting, is that igniting hope, right? And from hope comes creativity, that comes the exploration, I guess. I'm curious if there's mental trickery that, or strategies that you recommend. So, for example, in my reading, I had come across something. I think it's based on Buddhist teaching of when you have a negative thought, flip it to positive immediately. Through that practice, your default becomes positive. And I wonder if there's tricks like that you've discovered that help ignite hope, or that help people find moments of hope.
I think the trickery might be from my perspective, or from my stance, is what do you want different? So, and I don't know if I'm getting as specific as kind of what you're looking for, but if someone were to, so the individuals that I have seen that have been struggling and has been specifically struggling with COVID is like individuals that are struggling with isolation, just having to do it all. Like you had mentioned, a mom, or a friend of yours having to deal with parenting, but then they have to deal with parenting and then being stuck at home and then still doing their jobs, not enough resources, not enough alone time. And it's like, as we can focus on what I don't have, like what is really stressing me out or what is really frustrating me, I'd ask the question, what do you want? And as absurd as that might be, let yourself think about, okay, I want to connect. I want to be connected. I don't want to be isolated anymore. Okay. And so if you weren't isolated, if somehow you weren't isolated, what difference would that make to you? And allowing yourself to kind of explore, go into that imaginary world. And there is a science behind it, when you get into that imaginary world and you really sink yourself into it, that positive there will be positive feelings that are ignited within you. And the science behind that is when you feel positive, the solutions will come. If you feel like I am feeling good, and I think that's why going out for a walk and reconnecting with nature, because there is exercise and connecting with nature. It's really, really hard not to feel good. It is so hard not to feel good when you're outside walking in the woods and just looking around. Like it's really, really hard. And then when you're feeling good, the things don't seem to be as big and as insurmountable. They tend to shrink a little bit, which means I can see around it. It might not be clear, but if I could see around it and I landed somewhere, how would I know that I got there? And just kind of imagining myself over on that other side, there's the belief that you will know what to do to navigate through it.
Yeah, that's profound. And I think what I'm hearing is when you say focus on what you have or what you want, is what's that underlying need that you're trying to meet, you will. And then you find a substitute to meet that need or to address that need, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which allows that exploration. And the exploration of nature, it also allows you, I think, to get grounded. It takes the distractions away, I suspect. Because one of the things I've certainly found during COVID times is just the amount of information. So we are inundated by information, but COVID has just amplified that.
Yeah.
As a crisis would. So that nature, that sort of quiet time allows you to silence that and really take away those distractions that allow you to focus maybe on the core, right? The core piece that will help you to get beyond that. So I'm not sure I'm extrapolating that correctly, but that's
absolutely. Absolutely. There's that opportunity to be with yourself and the opportunity to sometimes just allow yourself to be. And I think too, it's okay to feel the way you feel. And I think sometimes giving yourself that permission to be who you need to be in that moment. I think we judge our feelings and we judge the state that we're in. And that's, in my opinion, not helpful. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be doing more and I should be doing this. That's not helpful. You know what? No, I'm not feeling it today. And it's okay not to be feeling it that way. And I think one thing that is coming out of COVID is that piece of the importance of connecting with others. So much mental health has been stigmatized to not have a conversation. I was just having a conversation today with an individual about how it's been so hard in his life to be able to talk about the struggles that we've had because it was so not talked about. And I think COVID has really demonstrated to us, you need to talk about it. You need to just say, excuse me, this is how I'm feeling. And I guarantee someone else is feeling that way. And I also guarantee somebody else has gotten themselves through that. And so by connecting with others in whatever way, whether it's online, over Zoom, 6 feet apart, whatever it may be, I guarantee the people that you connect with will have ways that they have gotten themselves through it. And giving it a try with what others are suggesting will let you know whether it's going to work or not.
Yeah, that's great. A couple points, and then we'll sort of go through the more regular questions. But the judging feeling, I think, is really important. Sometimes you just have to sit in that emotion, just let it ride, take note of it, experience it. We try to sort of get rid of it as soon as it comes, but sometimes you just have to sit with it, and that by itself de-escalates it. Certainly I find that's been helpful. So I'm hearing connecting with others, certainly sharing your experience. Others have faced the same. You probably have also faced that same experience yourself in the past. So going back on your own experiences, finding the tools.
And I think that's a really, I don't think we do enough time of just sitting with, okay, when I have felt this before, this is not the first time I've experienced this angst or this sadness or this frustration. And I haven't gotten to this part in my life without having those experiences. And if we can look back and really like examine it, how did I do this? What did I do that worked? And how did it make me feel? And what did others see me do to get myself through it? And what was I tapping within me that even made it possible for me to take that step to get myself out of that situation? I think looking at the times where looking for that, like investigating for times of when I was experiencing something that I want. So that feeling of connectedness or that happiness or that contentment, like we're feeling content, or that relaxed self. Like that's what I want to feel. Let's look at how I've been able to do it in the past, because you can't want something that you've never experienced before. So you've had to have experienced, even for just a moment, you've experienced it before.
That's great. You are your best teacher, really. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
And you are who you are today because of those past experiences, and
So
you
true.
be
Yep.
outside of that. So some of your methods, some of your techniques sort of came out through your talks. I've experienced them, so I recognize them. But could you speak to us about solution focused brief therapy, which is very unique, so people can appreciate what kind of a relationship, I guess, or what kind of service that would offer someone who would be in need?
So solution focused brief therapy is a modality that I use. I fully love it because it is very much out of the norm. It's not a problem focused modality. It looks at, but not to give the impression that you don't look at a problem, you don't avoid the problem. We just look more at what skills, traits, attributes, beliefs, values do you hold that might be helpful as you navigate through your life. So if it's a question-based modality, it's an opportunity where by asking questions gives the individual the opportunity to discover those skills, those attributes, those values, those beliefs, those traits about themselves that has been helpful to navigate them through other situations that might be helpful to navigate through this particular experience that they're having. It's very much about, where do I want to go, and how would I know that I'm even going in the right direction? So it's just asking questions about what would you notice? And again, through those questions, there is a belief, and the amount of times I've seen it where I don't give strategies, I don't tell you what to do, but through my questions, individuals, because they're not easy questions. I've been told they're very challenging questions, frustrating questions, but yet they have been able to find their way and figure out what their next steps are that they know are their best steps for them. I had a client we were chatting because she's just doing amazing things. And she said to me, you know what? I was so frustrated with your questions, but man, did they make me think. And they made me just think of it in a different way. And I had another gentleman say, it just gave me the opportunity to reflect and be able to see what I am doing well at and what I need to do more of so that I can navigate through this system. It's just, and then I had one person said, I don't know what we talked about, but man, did I ever feel good after talking to you. So it's those questions that allow you to explore and figure out what are the best steps for me, because I can't tell you what those next steps will be, but the questions that I ask will definitely open up those opportunities and those ideas.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like choose your own story in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I think is unique is you are the owner of that process. So as the client, right? So you're prompting, asking questions, but you ultimately become the owner of your change process, whatever that looks like.
100%. You are 100%
Yeah,
in
which
control.
is very unique, rather than maybe a more passive type modality where the therapist is more in control of the process. So, I think it is a great tool for a lot of people who are looking to maybe explore and learn from themselves, basically.
Absolutely. And I think why I love solution focused brief therapy is because I am the expert in my life. You are the expert in your life. You have lived in that body from day one. You know what works, you know what doesn't work. And what I am learning too is we don't take the time to really reflect. And I think coming and talking to me gives you an opportunity to really reflect. The number of people that have said to me, I never thought about that, or I never looked at it that way. And it's asking questions. And I hold the belief so deep in my body that you will figure it out. By asking these questions, I am 100% confident that you will figure it out. And there's science, there's hope theory that very much is ingrained with solution focused brief therapy, where, and I'm not going to be able to give you all the details, but where it says when the clinician has that type of confidence within the skills that I have, I'm confident in my skills, but they have confidence in the skills and abilities with the person that they are talking to. It is so powerful. But when I don't, the effectiveness is not there. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say self-awareness is a skill and that it's not innate. It's something that you develop through practice and through reflection. For someone who may be new to reflection, and I know it sounds sort of trite in a way, but how does one start asking these questions to start the reflection of how they can be the most powerful agent of their own life, I guess, if you will?
I think some of the things you could say, ask yourself is, what do I want different? And if that difference was there, so if I want to be happy, and as broad as that is, it's pretty powerful. Because if I want to be happy, and then the next question I would probably ask myself, okay, if I could be happy, I have to believe that's going to be, I have to believe that that's possible. And that's where, as a clinician, I have to hold that belief that that is possible. And even though the person that is sitting across from me may not believe it, I have to believe it and truly, truly believe it. So I think part of that stance is the person has to believe that being happy is possible. And then I would ask, when was the last time I felt the happiness that I wanted to feel, that I want to feel, or I want to get back? And taking some time to think about that. When was the last time I was happy? And where was I? And what was I doing? Who was I with? What was I thinking? What time of day was it at? Like getting really, really specific about it. And then if somehow I was able to do that in the future, what would I notice? What would I notice myself doing? Who would notice that who would even notice that I'm happy? What would they see in my body? What would they see in my face? What would I see in my body posture that would say, this is the happy. This is happening because I'm happy. So those are the kind of like really being curious. It's a real curiosity stance
Mhm.
of, yeah, it's a real curiosity, being genuinely curious, just like the way kids are, of asking, well, why? What do you mean? I don't understand that. It's really taking that curious stance to really fully explore.
Yeah, that's great. So really getting sort of granular, really being specific, especially something like happiness or contentment. It's so vague,
Mm,
but to really try to get down to what that actually means for you, may make you
yes.
recognize that you have points or moments of happiness throughout your day, which you may not notice. So it does help. So just being cognizant of time. I think what obviously just um, as a reminder of what you've learned in your journey, I think we can all carry forward as well in our trying to be resilient in these COVID unprecedented times. One, acknowledge and accept super
Yep.
normal what we're all going through. Lean on your support, and I think you spoke about the need to connect with people in whatever way that makes sense for you. Experiment. So
Mm,
you are your best teacher, right?
yep. Yep.
Give you that space to experiment, to try out things, to be creative with your time and your energy. Self-care. So I'd say taking breaks or
Mm,
focusing on self-care is probably more important than ever.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then build your resiliency bank. So past experiences where you survived or you conquered, what can you learn from those experiences, and can you bring those skills or that knowledge forth in these times?
Yep. And sometimes it's focusing on this those little things, whether it's going to bed, whether it's your nutrition, whether it's doing some meditation, whether it's practicing gratitude, whether it's just those little things that can kind of keep yourself full.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's just that 1% more, right? Like there's small
Yes.
little steps. So
Yes.
no one needs to go run a 10 miler unless they're trained and ready. Um, but for most of us, it's just like put your boots and go for a walk, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
the small
Yes.
things. So if this talk inspired anyone or opened a can of worm, how can we get a hold of you, Stacy?
So, best way you can email me at Stacy at sbscounseling.ca. You can give me a call at 506-232-8273. You can go to my website, www.sbscounseling.ca. If you're familiar with Rehab One, my office is in Rehab. I'm connected with them as well. So if you go to rehab1.ca, you'll see a lovely picture of me. That's the way you can contact me. Those are probably the best ways. I am on Facebook, Steps with Stacy at Facebook. So those would be the different ways to get in touch with me. And I'd love and if you're just curious about a little bit more, do not hesitate to reach out. I love talking about solution focus or how I can be helpful. And we can have a discussion about whether meeting with me would be helpful. I've done 15, 20-minute conversations or going for a walk for 10 or 15 minutes just to have, is this kind of what would work for me? That is always an option as well.
That's great. We'll put some of the links in the chat. And if you're thinking of training for Northumberland straight swim, Stacy's your girl. I don't know, not this time of year, but
Maybe in the summer.
I know there's some of you out there. Any final thoughts, any things any final nuggets you'd like to share before we log out tonight?
I think the most important thing is be kind to yourself. You guys are amazing people. You guys are full of resources. Be kind to yourself and just really trust that you will get through this. Not only will you survive, but you will thrive. You will 100% thrive in this.
That is a great way to finish. So you will thrive. Be kind to yourself, and trust that we will all get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Stacy, for agreeing to have a chat to share your story with us, BPW Greater Moncton. If you want to learn more, we'll share some of Stacy's information. And thank you so much. This, I'm sure, has been really valuable for many, many people.
Awesome. I really hope so. Thank you. Do not hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. Have a good evening. Ciao.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.